So, Mark,
Yes.
if you're a single young man,
Okay, I'll try to imagine that.
yeah, imagine that. What are some specific things you can do to get yourself ready for marriage?
For marriage. Well, I've thought a lot about this, and we chat all the time, even off camera. I would think it's kind of hard to even answer that without talking about a bigger principle.
Mm-hmm.
It says, it's Proverbs, right, where the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. But basically, like to even get to where you can be wise, you have to have a basic thing right, you know?
Yeah.
And I'd say a big thing, a big life principle is just it's much like that fear of the Lord, but it's just acknowledge that there is a standard, an objective standard. And to be in particular, it's God and God's law, God's word. That is true whether or not you acknowledge it, you know, and then you have to acknowledge it. But the point being that it's so easy to like say, a lot of people claim they have like this like code they live by that they follow, but really the code is following them. They aren't following the code. Can you relate to what I mean?
I think I do. Yeah. So you can, rather than having an objective code, you might just do what you want and then find a way to tie it all together.
Yeah, right. Say, oh, I wouldn't have thought this is okay, but apparently it is because I'm doing it.
Right.
You know?
And I'm a good person and I'm doing it, therefore it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if a good person would do it. You
Right.
know? Right. Yeah. And I think also that's an awfully broad principle, of course, that I shared. But basically, if then you get specific and say, okay, what's the overall goal of marriage here? If your goal is to have a thriving, lifelong marriage with one right person, then that defines a lot of your actions. Then, like, for example, if that's your goal, then to like flit from shallow relationship to shallow relationship doesn't get you any nearer. In fact, it gets you further from that.
That's right. In fact, yeah, an obvious fork in the road is, are you preparing for a long-term relationship, for a marriage, you know, a faithful long-term marriage? Because then you will behave differently, right? Even not that we even need to get into like how you find the right one, but if there's a big difference between once in your life trying to find the right person and stay with that person versus just a more generic how to pick up chicks type thing.
Yeah, right.
Might be an opposite strategy, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You're right. They aren't necessarily transferable skills.
No.
Yeah. That's a good point. Well, what's your answer to that question?
Well, I do think you need to pick which one you want. I mean, I kind of use that facetiously, how to pick up chicks. But even in a Christian sense, it's like, well, do you want to have a girlfriend now? Or do you want to like have a good marriage that starts a few years from now? Sometimes you do need to pick one, honestly.
Yeah, because, well, I'll just let you elaborate on that.
Well, just like anything else, I mean, if you want to, you could maybe get a job now, or maybe you could go to school for a few years and then get a better job, right? I just mean it's just like anything else. I think even just recognizing that simple fact, right? Recognizing that simple fact that, okay, I don't know when, but I do plan there will be a person. I want to be the right kind of person.
Yeah.
Then suddenly you realize, wait, why exactly do I need to have a girlfriend now? In fact, wait, if I have a girlfriend now and she comes along, then I actually wouldn't be available, right?
You mean if you have a girlfriend now and then the right one comes along?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, that it could actually get in the way then. You're occupied. There's no vacancy at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just to, again, I know people have all kinds of standards, or Christians even can have all different viewpoints, but just basically if you... Just sort of like you renting versus buying, right? Like when you buy a home, you have equity in it. You know, it's an investment in the long term.
Yeah.
If you're renting, nothing against that, but you aren't like building up anything for the long term, right?
Yeah. I would say one big thing is, okay, in the marriage vow, you vow to forsake all others. So you should probably start practicing that now. You know, the having and the holdings, that's relatively easy.
Right.
You know.
That comes naturally usually.
Yeah, right. You don't need to drill on that.
Yeah.
But to forsake all others, well, you could be drilling on that now. In fact, you should be, you know?
Well, you'll have to do that.
Yeah.
Like even now, it's kind of an illusion. Our culture kind of teaches us that, if you're single, like anything goes or it's open or
Yeah.
whatever. Well, no, because I mean, even if you're single and there are 1,000 girls out there, okay, 999 of them aren't the right one, right? And you do need to choose. I mean, even it's funny, even people who aren't believers necessarily, they might have a grudging respect for, say, an Olympic athlete who says, yeah, I could do this. I could, eat all the potato chips I want and never exercise, but I choose to forsake those things for this goal.
Right.
You tend to at least admire someone who at least knows where they're headed, right?
Mm-hmm. It's true.
So,
yeah, I would say a big thing, especially for men to do, is, well, okay, I'm not trying to paint dirty pictures in people's heads, but like it's a kind of a known thing that men are attracted to women, and men they dream about the honeymoon. Well, one tip I would give to guys is you could start building the honeymoon cottage now, and I don't mean literally, although
yeah. I was going to say that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, right. Might as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I mean is that if you want a self-respecting girl to like be willing to do that, you have to have walls. It has to be exclusive and a commitment. So there has to be a huge contrast between the right girl and every other girl. So even though you might not yet, if you don't yet know who the right girl is, you can still be building the walls. And I think that's exclusivity by what you say no to.
Yes.
Because in order to have that like protected space for her, you have to keep out everything else. Of course, bad things, and then even otherwise good things that aren't the right ones.
I think so.
So you do that. You're basically, in order for your yes to mean anything, you will have had to say a lot of no's. Because if when you propose to a girl, she says yes to you, but she also said yes to 500 guys, it doesn't mean anything.
The yes doesn't mean anything.
Right. So you can be building up your future credibility now by saying no to the wrong ones.
I think so. And also there's a big difference between, say a structure that is 100% weatherproof versus 90% weatherproof, right?
Yeah.
So like we're in our house right here. We're in our living room. We don't have any problems with rainwater leaking through the roof or anything, thankfully. But imagine this house was built just the same way, but they just neglected to, put the caulk around the edges or, nail down those last few shingles. You could say, well, that's pretty good. It keeps out most of the rain.
Yeah.
But we all know what happens. You get water comes in, you get mold, et cetera, et cetera. You end up with a big problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people do. I see this with a lot of young men where it's sort of like that line, like I can resist anything except temptation.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, well, as long as I'm not tried or tested in any way, I think I can stand on this rock. And I'm like, whoa, a gentle breeze. Whoa, like that was unexpected.
Yeah.
So
True.
Well, even when we've been looking at property lately, we've parcels around here, but they'll have some of the land around here is floodplain, and they'll even have 100-year floodplain, right? So, which means even that on average, I guess once every 100 years, there will be a flood that will reach that level, and they won't even let you build a house in that zone.
Yeah.
Even though you can say, oh, come on, like I only need it for 20 years.
Yeah.
They say, no, long term, we don't want people building houses in 100-year floodplain.
Yeah, and to get a little more specific on that point, what's a real world example of how you can say no in advance? Like, how are you buying your yes now by saying no now?
Well, I think you have to just be honest with yourself before you even get started. Like, you never know the problems you're avoiding, right? So say a girl comes along and you just know she's not the right one. She's not wife material for whatever reason. Of course, obvious ones, like she's not single or just anything like that. Maybe she's not a believer if you are. I think you just have to admit right away, no, just no.
Don't even let yourself get enticed in a way.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter how dazzling her eyes are or anything else. Like just no. And otherwise, just it's so easy to say, well, I have these standards, but this one's really cute or whatever, really really likable, and people just aren't honest with themselves. They might say, well, we'll see how it goes, or well, this isn't exactly a date. We're just going to kind of hang around together. Again, not that guys and girls can't hang out together. I think you kind of just have to be deliberate.
You have to know what your motives are.
Yeah, just be honest with yourselves. Because I think practically what happens is people, it's just always a shame when most people have some kind of a standard, Christians and non-Christians alike. I mean, most people want to get married and have a happy marriage. That's the majority of people in the country, I think. But just it's hard. You have to give things up along the way. You have to say no to other things along the way.
Yeah.
I think that's usually where the game is won or lost. And sometimes it's kind of the worst of both worlds. Like people might kind of back into a relationship that isn't so good, maybe not even admit to themselves until it's too late that, oh, okay, I guess I'm in a relationship with this person. Maybe you're not pure before marriage or whatever. And then suddenly you just find yourself there like, oh, we've been together a few years. I wonder what we should do now. And then for what I've seen, this happen to guys, like guys who they just want to have a live-in girlfriend before marriage. Maybe they think in a way, oh, good, I'm not being bound by marriage, right? I'm keeping my options open. Well, usually sooner or later, it's like, we've been together a few years. She's insisting on the ring. What do we do?
Yeah.
Of course, as Christians, you shouldn't even be going there. But I see all the same, like, well, that didn't do you any good because now are you going to marry this girl that you maybe never were even so sure about the relationship in the first place, right? But now it's like, well, I have these years invested. Neither of us are getting any younger. Okay, I guess might as well get that marriage license. And then I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seems like, because at least I sometimes have a grudging respect for someone who at least is like someone who's just an atheist, who just doesn't believe there's any God or any morality. I totally don't agree. But at least then, okay, well, hey, they're behaving as if, there is no morality in this area. We're all just creatures. We're basically just animals. So, hey, if you like it, do it. But doesn't it, you know what I mean? Like people almost get the worst of both worlds. Like they'll kind of nod at a standard but then they don't have the heart to really go through with that.
Yeah.
It's like I think C.S. Lewis even once, I probably said this before, but he talked in one of his stories about like, oh man, you might have someone at the end of his life, going into the hereafter and thinking, boy, I didn't do what I should have done, but I didn't do what I wanted either. I was just kind of a lukewarm Christian. And I didn't really get anywhere.
Yeah.
So
one principle also I would say is sharpening the axe. Did you hear that Abe Lincoln quote? I think he said if I had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 7 sharpening the axe.
Yes.
And that's a good point because that's actually the fastest way to do it. If you try to chop down a tree with a brick, it might take you a month. Right. I don't know.
Right.
But people, that's the part everybody wants.
Yeah.
And like guys, okay, like the part you want that pretty girl in your arms. That's the part you want. Not realizing that you might have the perfect girl come along, but you aren't ready at all. Exactly. You're totally flat-footed. Well, yeah. You haven't made anything out of yourself. You aren't prepared to be in a relationship.
Well, yeah, you're just window shopping then, but you can't afford anything, right? So even if I think people spend way too much time looking and not enough time preparing, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, or another metaphor is if you have a lousy product but put all of your budget into advertising.
Yes.
Versus just making a good product and not really worrying too much about the advertising.
I know. It's just so easy to do. Or I've heard men and women alike, but I've heard guys who maybe guys who aren't really making much of themselves or going anywhere in life, but maybe they'll have this dream girl in mind that, oh yeah, she's going to be this, she's going to look like this, she's going to be like this, she's going to be the sweetest girl in the world and the prettiest girl in the world and maybe also be talented and she's going to do this.
But not have high standards.
Yeah, somehow. Yeah, and have horrible taste in men.
Right. Counting on that one. Yeah.
Right, somehow you need that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's just so easy to do that. And
well, what are some ways where a guy or a girl, but we could keep it to guys, but can sharpen the axe?
Well, for one, I do think your nose make your yeses.
My nose?
Your nose.
Okay.
I've been meaning to mention it for some time.
Go on.
No, that's good because I couldn't think of how to finish that sentence anyway. Okay. But all the times you
have to say no in advance. You have to Yeah.
Well, can you think of, there are different games like this. Like you remember Minesweeper from
Sure.
back in the day?
Yeah.
Well, like you're trying to find the bombs, like you're trying to click on the grid. And each time you click where there isn't a bomb, like you're rolling something out.
Yeah.
It's like every no gets you closer to the yes.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And let's go even further. What are the no's that is it just simply saying no to like the Scarlet Woman sort of? Mm-hmm. What are you doing? How can you sharpen that axe?
Well, hopefully you do say no to the actual Scarlet Women.
Okay.
But no, I think just being honest with yourself. Just it sounds kind of dry, but we work as court reporters. We're around the legal field all the time, and one of the objections is that objection irrelevant, or one of them is it's kind of long-winded. But if someone asks a question of your client, then they'll object and say that's not calculated to lead to admissible evidence.
Okay.
A long way of saying, hey, come on, this isn't even, this is a dead end. You're just wasting time. So basically just, hey, no one, you can't see the future with a relationship. But if you know going into it that there's no way this could be marriage material, this relationship could work, then you are just wasting everyone's time. You're wasting your time and her time.
Right.
Right.
And that's it's getting you further from the right one in a way. Because not only are you wasting that time and not only are you occupied then, but you've kind of watered down your yes because you're saying yes to other things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a real obvious one. And then and of course that's just one thing of like, sort of avoiding the wrong ones, having self-control. But as far as how to sharpen the axe, I'd say for men, well, for one, try to be in decent shape. Try to, at least we're all going to be different. Some people are like, I'm like moderately athletic. I've never like loved sports as much as some of the guys did, but I'm glad that I could at least hold my own in different sports. Growing up, it's neat to kind of get in there. That's one thing. Men, I think having a decent job, being a good provider, right? That's a pretty big deal. And women care about that, and you should care about that. Because that's going to matter. Like it's going to matter if can you afford to will both parents need to work just to bring in the income, or can you afford to have the mom stay home with the kids if she wants to? What if you want to homeschool? Can you be a good enough provider so she can homeschool if that's the way you like it and she likes it? So yeah, those are a couple.
Anything else? One, just to kind of distill what you said making yourself attractive, basically. And I guess that would be physically attractive, just like good habits, good hygiene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, like taking care of business. Okay, like making sure you know what you're doing in life.
Yeah.
Well, one I would add is being a leader. And being a leader means doing it whether or not anyone else is doing it. So you should be doing the right thing, whether or not and you're being applauded for it. Well, just do it anyway.
Yes, I agree.
And I think that's why I started this. Well, like fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. But like, you have to have an objective, like vanishing point where everything's going toward.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I would say, okay, a few ways to sharpen the axe. You talked about of course, making yourself attractive. Physically, don't. Take a shower now and then, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Get things in line. A big thing is to have, a purpose in life, and not just an arbitrary purpose like, for me, it's all about the flute or something. I mean, like a purpose, an objective purpose. And that's why it's so important to base your life on God, because, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And that's unchanging. And it's true whether or not you feel it or whether or not you want it, I
agree.
And so I would say start practicing following what you're supposed to do regardless of the circumstances. I think for me, a really key statement was, instead of probably no one would actually say this, but people will live this out. They would say, God, I'll only follow you if it means being in a relationship. I had to say, God, I'll only be in a relationship if it means following you. And that's a tough one. But once you've decided, no, it's going to be, I'll only do it if it's like in accordance with what God wants and what God says. It's not against my conscience, not against what's in the Bible,
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, no, I agree. For one, that really anything in life should meet that standard.
Yeah.
It should be following God first. and sort of having the useless servant mentality, as
Yeah.
it says in the Bible. Well, also, I just think that for young men or women, but especially young men, you want to be going somewhere. And I think women like men who are going somewhere. I mean, by the way, that goes both ways. Like, I like a young lady who's going somewhere in a sense. I don't mean just like ambition per se, but I just mean, no, like who knows what she believes, who's following God, who neither, you don't want to be a chameleon. You don't want to just be blending in with the current group you're in.
Right.
In fact, I've had plenty of times where like a girl's guessed wrong, right? Like maybe I'm out of my element. Maybe I'm not in a Christian setting and they don't know what a square I am. So, maybe a girl comes up and tells an off-color joke or something.
Thinking she's impressing you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That people guess wrong. And I've often thought, yeah, you can't. And then maybe in that setting, I feel a little, in the moment, I think, man, if only I could just kind of dumb it down a little, I sure would fill it in with this crowd better. No one likes to be goody two-shoes or whatever. But I think, no, what if I did dumb it down here, and then Miss Wright is over there across the room and sees me dumbing it down.
And you lost her then.
Yeah, I lost her. And, to impress someone I'm not interested in.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So I do think your true nature tends to come out sooner or later. You might as well, like, since you can't please everyone, you might as well please the people you want to please.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But no, and I do think going somewhere, like mom and dad would use the analogy of it's not so much the two of you seeking each other, it's like you're seeking God and she's seeking God.
Right.
Then you'll intersect.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's how it takes faith, because you do have to leave anything that isn't following God, following that objective point. But then also you'll be a perfect fit for someone else who's following that.
And you'll be headed in the same direction already, right?
Exactly.
Just meet each other in stride one day.
Other thing, this is kind of, this isn't only pertaining to men, it's men and women, but it's a form of leadership, is being the same thing regardless of what crowd you're in. So the analogy I think of is, let's say you there's a temptation to want to fit in. So I think of a lock and a key. So if you say, oh, I'm going to be like, instead of like a firm defined key, I'm going to just be like putty that will fit any lock. In a way, yes, you will fit every lock, but you won't fit any particular lock very well.
Yes.
But if you dare to be a key, a sharp defined key, you'll clink against every lock, except you'll fit beautifully with one lock. It'll be a perfect fit. And you have to trade. You can trade a bunch of kind of squishy, you have to exchange a lot of squishy, so-so things in exchange for one perfect fit.
That's right.
And that's probably a good attitude. That's a form of leadership. Also, that's a good goal to have in mind. Head for that, the perfect fit.
I think so.
Yeah.
Also, just practically speaking, you might as well be yourself, right? Because sooner or later you're going to, if you end up living with this person for decades, if you're married, they're going to find out the true you.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think, hey, just like, aren't there truth in advertising laws to some extent, right?
Yeah, right.
So I think, hey,
let them know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're not a big party animal, you don't have to act like a big party animal.
Yeah.
If you're not X, you don't have to act like X.
Right.
Right?
Wouldn't it be a shame if what you really wanted, let's just use an example, that what you really wanted was someone who's quiet and bookish, but then the person who's really quiet and bookish was self-conscious and acted like a party animal and lost you?
Yeah, exactly. It would just be such a shame.
Or vice versa, yeah.
Right, or someone falls in love with you for the wrong reason. I think that's why a lot of Hollywood marriages haven't worked out too. I've heard this in interviews, but like people fall in love with your image, right? Yeah. So like, I don't know.
They saw you leap out of that burning building or something.
Yeah, no one can live up to that.
Yeah.
Or like no man or woman always looks that good all the time, or is always that brave or heroic or witty or whatever.
Yeah.
And yet we all kind of fall for